What's up YouTube? It's Nerdy, and welcome back to Transmissions Draft League, Season number 4. Today I am bringing you our Week 1 game. To start off the season, we have a very difficult match versus a very strong LA Chargebeams team. I am excited for this game. Of course, this will probably determine a lot of playoff seeding and who actually makes it to the playoffs. We got a tough division this season, and we are playing one of the top teams in Week 1. So definitely gotta get a strong start this season, and hopefully this team in front of you will get us there. To start off, we have Indeedee Female. This is a very supportive set. This set is basically meant to shut down what I think are two of JKG's most annoying things that he can do. But of course, Psychic Surge is also just good for our team, so just being able to have that ability attached to a pretty awesome support Pokemon is also really nice. Between Follow Me and Safety Goggles, we can shut down things like Sleep Powder from Lilligant, which in my opinion is the biggest X factor that JKG has against us. If JKG decides to spam Sleep against us, that is probably the most RNG reliant but also best way he has at dealing with our offense. That being said, we have two Pokemon on this team that can certainly shut that down, so looking forward to that. We are also running Imprisoned Trick Room because obviously JKG does have a semi-Trick Room team, and if he's going really heavily into that, Indeedee basically shuts that down immediately and is not threatened to be one-hit KO'd by just about anything, and with Terra Fairy kind of walls just about everything that doesn't have good coverage for it, which honestly there is nothing that does. On top of that, Psychic is actually pretty decent. There's only one immunity in Chiyu on our opponent's team, and honestly, JKG's team is pretty specially frail, so Psychic should actually be doing consistent damage. After that, we have got Hariyama. This is a bit of a bulkier set, but the awesome thing about this set is that between Thick Fat and Assault Vest, and a little bit of special defense investment, we actually kind of wall both of JKG's threatening fire types, and we can effectively 1v1 Blood Moon Ursaluna. Hariyama is actually so bulky that it tanks a Terra Normal Life Orb Blood Moon from Ursaluna Blood Moon, and has enough HP left to tank another one. So awesome stats there, especially because when we fire back at close combat, we are always guaranteed to KO that Pokemon. So yeah, Hariyama is doing pretty solid. On top of that, we are running a little bit of speed investment because of course we do have pretty consistent Tailwind to be able to either match or hopefully exceed our opponent's own Tailwind. And then between Close Combat, Headlong Rush, and Knockoff, we hit basically everything on our opponent's team, especially just the important threats. Knockoff also threatens all of the Ghost Terra that will be used to dodge Fake Out. And then Fake Out looks like anti-synergy when we just talked about our own Psychic Terrain. The awesome thing about Hariyama and Indeedee is that I'm not forced to lead both of them by any means. And so Psychic Terrain can always be something that I have in the back to be able to pull the trigger whenever I want. And Fake Out will always be online as long as I don't set up Psychic Terrain. And like I said, because I have the power to do that, it keeps my opponent guessing and it keeps me in the driver's seat. Next up, I've got a Terra Water Iron Crown. We're running Psychic Seed because it boosts our bulk on the special side, which is the more important side against JKG. On top of that, Terra Water does give us a really good defensive type, as only Lilligant Hisui can really effectively hit water types. But on top of that, we are also running Calm Mind. This gives us the ability to win the long game versus all of our JKG's special attackers. We're already bulky enough to comfortably get a Calm Mind up in front of any of them. And then with a special attack boost, both Expanding Force and Tachyon Cutter can start getting one-hit KOs, which for a spread move is obviously really strong, especially when this might be like a late game sweeper against a team that's already a little bit softened up by something like Hariyama. Next up, we have Grafii, a Prankster Focus Sash set. In all honesty, I'm not 100% that I'm even going to use Grafii this week. It's mostly just a panic button because, like I said, since we control our own psychic terrain, we can use Grafii super effectively to just be able to slow down a Pokemon like Torkoal. That being said, Ursaluna Blood Moon also gets way more manageable at -1 special attack, especially if this Pokemon's not even going to run a damage boosting item. Without a Life Orb and at -1 special attack, Grafii and Co can really handle that Pokemon. The other thing is that Super Fang makes a lot of damage calcs even better. Particularly Torkoal's Eruption gets basically it becomes a non-factor when at 50% HP. But it also means that Pokemon like Iron Crown don't even need to get a boost in order to KO certain things. So that puts us in a really comfortable position to be able to sweep through our opponent's team. Next up, we have Talonflame with Terraflying Sharpbeak. So despite having 3 non-damaging moves, we are a very offensive Talonflame. And this is mostly to put a ton of pressure on Pokemon like Volbeat and Lilligant Hisui. Both of those Pokemon are weak to Dual Wing Bait, and because how strong it is, it actually means that Focus Sash on either of those Pokemon is a non-factor. On top of that, forcing either of those Pokemon to Terra is really, really good for this team, because it means that something like Torkoal, Chi-Yu, or even Blood Moon cannot effectively use it. And that means that we get to kind of bully those Pokemon around. And if our opponent's spending the Terra on either of those 2 Pokemon, it's not going to be a big enough difference against our stronger offense, in my opinion. But it is also necessary if JKG wants to get any value out of those support Pokemon. I do believe that basically every support Pokemon on JKG's team is going to require a Terra in order to get something done against my team. And that means that it will not be available to his offensive pieces, or those offensive pieces will have to go without the support necessary to actually get some of his best strategies off. Talonflame is great for that, both offensively and defensively. Taunt and Tailwind, of course, are really good at making sure that our speed control works and our opponent's doesn't. And then Dual Wing Beat is obviously perfect for taking out those 2 Pokemon. But like I said, this is a very aggressive Talonflame, so it's not just going to be sitting on the field after it accomplishes the jobs that I have set up for it. Finally, we have Ogerpon Cornerstone. Ogerpon Cornerstone, this is a very normal set for Ogerpon Cornerstone. Spiky Shield, Follow Me, Ivy Cudgel, and Hornleech is super normal. On top of that, we are just running enough speed on Ogerpon to make sure that we always outspeed a max speed Chi-Yu. The idea for Cornerstone is that it hits basically every Pokemon on JKG's team super effectively, and then kind of also invalidates Lilligant Hisui's best disruption. Now, Cornerstone still matches up pretty poorly into Lilligant, just because that close combat will bring us down to Sturdy. But the idea is to be able to use this interchangeably with Hariyama. While Hariyama can play it a little bit longer and soften up our opponent's team for a longer stretch of time, Cornerstone is more so useful for just getting one-hit KOs off the rip. On top of that, it does also enable us to not have to use Indeedee Female to stop things like the Sleep Powder from Lilligant Hisui. So just as like a quick spoiler, the game plan is basically to lead Talonflame plus either Hariyama or Cornerstone, depending on what the matchup calls for, like what JKG brings. And then in the back, we are going to bring in Indeedee Female and Iron Crown, basically as just like a second boss battle that our opponent has to play. But that is the team that we're bringing for week 1, so hopefully it goes well for us, and I'll see you in the games. Alright, we are in the game. Let's go ahead and take a look at what JKG's brought. We have a Mental Herb Elekid with Electroweb, Follow Me, Helping Hand, and Taunt. Assault Vest, Barcelona Blood Moon with Terra Dark. Honestly, good news for us. No damage boosting item does mean that it's very beatable for us. Wide Lens, Lilligant Hisui with Terra Water. It looks like they are actually planning on trying to land those sleep powders. We also have a Terra Fire, Eruption Torkoal, looking to get those off. Choice Scarf Chiyu, also Terra Fire. Lots of fire type damage, so good thing that Hariyama is set up to beat that. And then we have a Babiri Berry Mimikyu. Actually don't know how that would work against our Tachyon Cutter. Very interesting. Also running Trick Room and Taunt as well as Destiny Bond. Yeah, so very interesting there. Also means that Mimikyu can't really touch NDD female. Looking at this, I am leaning towards using Hariyama here. It looks like it should do pretty well into our opponent's team. Especially because multiple Pokemon are running Snarl. Hariyama does not care about that. I also still like Talonflame in lead. Our opponent's going slow this time around, but the Mental Herb is on the Elekid. And if the lead is Elekid plus Mimikyu, we are probably set up in a pretty good scenario where we don't have to KO anything. We can just play slow for the sake of playing slow. The other thing is that if our opponent does lead Elekid plus Mimikyu, it requires the Terra Ghost on Elekid in order to not have it be taunted right away. Or sorry, faked out right away. In the back, honestly, I'm leaning towards just the standard NDD Iron Crown. I think that that's our best case scenario, so let's go ahead and pull the trigger on that. We'll see what JKG wants to do here. He's got a couple of leads here, like I called out. Elekid plus Mimikyu could be a lead. There is also a Lilligant plus Torkoal lead. And then there is, of course, a little bit more diverse aggressive leads, using something like Chiyu, for example. That could also be potentially dangerous. Also good to note, our opponent doesn't have Protect on several Pokemon. Both the Lilligant, Blood Moon, and Chiyu don't have Protect, as well as Elekid. So only Torkoal can Protect. So that is really good to have as well. Keep that in mind. The only things that I could really foresee going wrong is, of course, if Trick Room does get up and we don't have Disruption for exactly Torkoal, that can become an issue. We are running Protect on almost every Pokemon aside from Hariyama and Indeedee, so not that big of a problem. We also can reverse the Trick Room using Indeedee's own Trick Room. And then, yeah, I think we have a lot of things that should set us up for success here. Very curious to see how JKG is going to play this lead. Like I said, he's got multiple leads. We are prepped for basically all of them. So I don't really foresee too much of this going super poorly, in my opinion. The other thing to call out, by the way, is that Blood Moon is running Terra Dark. That does mean that it can't escape its fighting weakness with Hariyama. So very happy that we did center a fair amount of our strategy around Hariyama. We also have a big audience this time around, 4 people watching the battle live. And if you do want to watch the battle live, of course, join the Discord. Hopefully it should be linked somewhere. But of course, if you are watching the battle live, make sure that you also give the video a watch. Hopefully there is some valuable commentary, or at least something interesting for you to take away when you are prepping or building or even playing your own games. Even if it's versus me, having some insight on your opponent is always nice, but I like to do these just because it is entertaining for me to be entertaining. Let's see what the leads are. We have Hariyama Talonflame up against Elekid and Ursaluna Blood Moon. Okay. Honestly, pretty solid lead for us here. Our opponent obviously cannot protect either of these Pokemon. He can spend a Terra Ghost on Elekid in order to avoid Fake Out there, which means we do have a pretty safe Fake Out into the Ursaluna Blood Moon. On the Talonflame side, we are pretty safe to do just about anything. In this position, I honestly just want to get some damage down on this Blood Moon. Let's bring the Hariyama up. We are close combat. And we have a little bit of attack investment. 148 adamant. Alright, so super bulky Blood Moon does actually live this. So what I'm tempted to do is to just go for the Fake Out here and go for a dual Wing Beat into this Pokemon. It does put it in range of close combat. The other move to go for here is Knock Off and then use Taunt on the next turn. I am tempted to go for that. Let's go ahead and go for Fake Out here. And that does stop the Blood Moon from moving this turn. And then because the Elekid can actually click Electro Web here, I do want to be clicking Tailwind. The idea here is that Elekid being able to click Electro Web should slow us down to the point where we're not guaranteed outspeeding these Pokemon. Talonflame should always outspeed both of these Pokemon. But Hariyama, even with speed investment, does not guarantee to outspeed these Pokemon. So it will require us to have the speed boost of Tailwind in order to outspeed even after Electro Web. Looking at his potential options here, I think it is pretty likely to be a Follow Me here from the Elekid. And I would probably expect some combination of attack from Blood Moon Ursaluna here. I don't think that JKG will spend a Terra this turn, so we shall see. I guess the other thing to look at is Elekid versus Talonflame. And we are assuming some amount of HP investment. It looks like Dual Wing Beat is a 2-hit KO. Let's bring Hariyama back up. So the combination of Knockoff and Dual Wing Beat actually should KO Elekid. Of course, we can also spend a close combat to guaranteed KO this Pokemon, but I think I would like to preserve my special defense here. could also be a switch on this turn. I'm not 100% sure what it could be. Potentially Scarf Chiyu could be threatening. Fake Out comes out, Follow Me comes out, Tailwind guarantees that we are going to be moving first. Okay, and then like I said, the combination of Knockoff and Dual Wing Beat should KO the Elekid and puts us in a really good spot to deal with the Blood Moon on the following turn. Like I mentioned at the beginning of this, our opponent only has Protect on one Pokemon, which simplifies our game plan a lot, especially because we're planning on playing this very offensively. We're not too afraid of what JKG can do offensively, especially with Hariyama. So we can put out a lot of damage that our opponent can't really match because we are allowed to basically move first and don't have to read things like Protect. Obviously our opponent also doesn't have to read Protects here, aside from a potential Protect from the Talonflame. But obviously we are in a good position there. The other thing that I could see here is a potential Elekid switch here. The reason why I want to get rid of Elekid early is just because getting rid of our opponent's Follow Me user is going to be really valuable for our single target damage that Hariyama is putting out. Follow Me does come out once again. Dual Wing Beat comes out and nearly one-hit KOs the Elekid. And of course, Static gonna activate both times here, paralyzing both Pokemon. Blood Moon also gets a crit, which brings Hariyama down to below half. We are still in a pretty decent position here, in my opinion. Our opponent can't use Blood Moon 2 turns in a row, so it is probably a Hyper Voice coming up next, and then depending on what comes in next, we should still be in a good spot. Tailwind does also mitigate the Paralysis speed drop, so for the most part, we should still be faster than this Blood Moon Ursaluna and be able to threaten it with very big damage for that as well. The only thing that we can't outspeed at this point now is actually the Chiyu, which could present some issues, but not that big of an issue. Lilligant Hisui is going to be the switch here. In my opinion, this is pretty clear what has to happen here. We are going to try and drop this Lilligant Hisui, which is probably going to get the Terra here. But we are just going to split our damage here a little bit and try to KO both Pokemon here. Yeah, like Skipley is saying in the chat, there is some upside to this. Honestly, we just care about the speed control aspect of that static para. We are still in a good spot because Dual Wing Beat is still a priority move here. Terra Water does come out from the Lilligant Hisui, so it is going to be dropped, but not too low here. And Earth Power, not going to take out Hariyama, which does live that, and Close Combat drops Ursaluna down to 5%. Yeah, so now Talonflame can take a KO on either Pokemon here. We are nearly 3 Pokemon up at this point, and We are feeling very good about that. Let's go ahead and just click close combat here, and we'll click the dual wing beat into the Lilligant Hisui. Interesting thing to note here is that Ursaluna is faster than our Hariyama. Um, so the thing that this means is that this Ursaluna Blood Moon is very heavily speed invested. Um, it does also mean that it's probably, based on the amount of damage that we did, also very bulky. So it doesn't have a ton of special attack investment, and that means that a Pokemon like Iron Crown will have a really nice time 1v1ing it. I'm interested to see what JKG can do from this position. In my opinion, he's got to be hoping for a full para, at least on Talonflame, in order to try and grab 2 KOs here. I actually think he can't KO Talonflame, but it is going to be effectively neutered if it's not at full HP. So we'll see what he goes for here. My guess is it's probably going to be some combination of Sleep Powder into Talonflame plus Hyper Voice, and that should effectively neuter the Pokemon that he has in front of him. That being said, both Pokemon being pretty low is not great for him, for sure, and it does put our still aggressive back to Pokemon in a good position. Okay, Dual Wing Beat does come out, so no full para there. Lilligant does go down, and actually looks like a speed tie between Hariyama and Blood Moon. So Hariyama able to move first there, and now Torkoal comes in with the Drought. Here we can just click Headlong Rush, and of course, in my opinion, Dual Wing Beat is probably preferred here. In my opinion, it's probably got to be Dual Wing Beat just because Eruption is more threatening than Weather Ball. So let's go ahead and go for that. Yep. So we connect with the Dual Wing Beat, do a little bit of damage there. We are still faster, so Headlong Rush connects. Torkoal gonna go for the Eruption. Pitiful damage despite the crit. And yeah, we are set up. I am not, however, going to reveal the Iron Crown. So let's just go ahead and click Psychic there. And Psychic gonna take out the Torkoal. So GG's for game 1. Obviously that went really well. We only lost a single Pokemon, and we are definitely in the lead for the next game. No reason for us to change anything up. Like I said, this lead was pretty prepared for any of the leads that JKG could use, and I am feeling pretty confident in the fact that no matter what he switches up to, any of the leads that I previously mentioned, whether it's Torkoal Lilligant or Mimikyu plus Elekid or Mimikyu plus Lilligant, we do have pretty good answers for all of them. Like I mentioned in the previous game, we had 2 back-to-back turns where, um, or sorry, the after you is what caused Blood Moon to move before Hariyama. So what that ends up meaning is that Hariyama is most likely faster than Blood Moon, regardless of Blood Moon's speed investment. That being said, it was also not hitting that hard. Um, with no damage boosting item, it seems like it actually can't break through Hariyama that effectively. The one thing that I did actually want to calc from this was Dual Wing Bait versus Lilligant Hisui with Terra Water against Talonflame. They did not get a maximum roll there. Are adamant. So this is probably a 0 bulk Lilligant Hisui. Terra Flying unfortunately does not get the job done. However, I believe Fake Out plus Dual Wing Bait might get the job done. It might. Okay, let's go ahead and see the leads. It is Mimikyu plus Torkoal, actually. Okay. In my opinion, pretty obvious what our opponent wants to do here, lead-wise. This is a Trick Room lead. I think, regardless, we do just... I mean... There's no mental herb here, so just firing a taunt at this Mimikyu that also doesn't have Protect does mean a pretty free turn for us here. JKG is definitely in a tough spot for sure. It's okay, look. Yeah, I think the thing that JKG is thinking through at this point is what to do with the Mimikyu. I think it's pretty obvious that I'm going to fire a taunt into this slot, and probably pretty obvious that I'm going to fire a Fake Out into the Torkoal. I think regardless, he has to be considering a switch on either and or both sides. And even with that, I'm not 100% certain that it will work out for him either way. The other thing that is obviously really nice about Talonflame's taunt in particular is that because it is not a prankster taunt, it is unaffected by the fact that Mimikyu is Terra Dark. So we can taunt this Pokemon regardless of whether or not it Terras. And the other benefit of Dual Wing Beat is that because we are not Brave Bird, we can actually break through Mimikyu's disguise, and we don't take any recoil damage. So no matter what, Mimikyu will have damage being put down on it. Of course, we do want to favor putting damage down onto the Torkoal. If I had to guess what the back two Pokemon were for JKG, it's most likely the Lilligant Hisui, which if he does not deal with the Talonflame, does put him in a really tough spot. And my guess is it's probably the Chi-Yu this time around, given how ineffective the Blood Moon was. And if that's the case, his number one goal has got to be to KO this Talonflame. So I'd imagine that he's probably going to go on the offensive with Mimikyu. Apologies for not filling some of the time here. There is quite a bit of time in between turns, and of course, there's not really too much commentary to put in here. We have a pretty clear game plan and, in my opinion, really easy choices to make. Based on what JKG puts in front of us, we have answers for just about all of it. So, like I said, not really too worried about that. The truth is also, by the way, about Torkoal specifically, both of these Pokemon actually do okay into Eruption. Hariyama is not threatened by any means for a one-hit KO by this Eruption, thanks to the Assault Vest and the Thick Fat. It actually causes Eruption to do less than 30%. Yeah, so honestly, I'm kind of at the point where we can ignore Torkoal at least for the moment. If our opponent's speed control is denied, then Torkoal will not get full benefit even against our back Pokemon because they'll be able to move first. Switch out is actually into Lilligant Hisui here. Taunt comes out, and Shadow Claw going to connect, and a crit there just for good measure. This is a scenario where I might be willing to pull the trigger on Terra Grass. Lilligant Hisui doesn't threaten much aside from putting either Pokemon to sleep here. We can also switch in Indeedee here in order to keep one of our Pokemon safe from that. Lilligant Hisui is definitely faster than our Talonflame if it has any kind of speed investment. Obviously, we are running a little bit of speed investment on our Talonflame, so it needs to be pretty close to max speed investment. But based on what we saw last game, they don't have any bulk investment, so it's pretty likely just max speed and max attack. We have a couple of choices here. I'm leaning towards the Terra Grass Close Combat into Lilligant option here, because the truth is, even after Terra Grass, Eruption is still only doing about 50% to Torkoal. So yeah, I think I'm okay with just clicking Terra Grass in Close Combat. Let's actually check to see if we can use... bit weaker knockoff into this Pokemon to get the KO. Does not look like it, so we are going to have to click Close Combat. And then on the Talonflame side, I think he's probably got to be reading a Protect on the Talonflame side. I want to get Tailwind off, so let's go ahead and just click Tailwind. Okay, it is a Torkoal switch, actually. Sleep Powder, we are immune there. And Close Combat will take out the Lillian Hisui. Okay, once again, we are in a good spot. Just fire a Headlong Rush into the Torkoal and a Taunt into the Mimikyu. At -2 special defense, Weather Ball actually might have a chance to KO us. But in order to guarantee it, he actually needs to double into the Hariyama here. This also could just be Protect from the Torkoal. Good damage on the Torkoal. Hariyama will finally go down to that double up. And now we are in an interesting position, I'd say. Um, honestly, I think we're still super okay right now. I'm gonna go ahead and put in Ndidi right now. We should be able to get pretty good damage down here. Actually, let's look at Torkoal versus Ndidi. At Psychic. Psychic actually should KO Torkoal, assuming no special bulk. It might have some, but even if it doesn't, we're in a good position here. Yeah, let's go ahead and actually just fire a Psychic into the Torkoal, and I will definitely break the disguise on the Mimikyu here. The Wingbeat comes out, breaking the disguise, doing a little bit of damage, and then the second one does a good chunk, and Torkoal will go down. Shadow Claw, not quite enough to take out the Talonflame here, and we will now reveal our opponent's last Pokemon. It is in fact the Chi-Yu, so we are in an okay spot here, I'd say. Let's see how much Mimikyu will take from this. Psychic, not quite going to be able to take out. From this position, one more turn of Tailwind and one more turn of Sun here. I think the safest here, our opponent probably has to go for Dark Pulse here. So I think our safest play is to just try to double up into the... This game might end up coming down to Chi-Yu versus Iron Crown. Of course, the Chi-Yu is scarfed. With a high roll, it might have a chance to take out the Ndidi. Special defense, so let's see. Yeah, actually, Chi-Yu is incapable of OHKOing our Ndidi here. Like I said, he's probably more likely to go after the Talonflame at this point. Just because Talonflame can actually damage the Chi-Yu. Heck? It's okay. Right. Okay, it is Terra Fire actually from the Chi-Yu, so Dual Wingbeat will come out, not quite take out the Mimikyu, and Mimikyu will actually go down to the Psychic. We can now use Follow Me, and because Chiyu is locked into Flamethrower, Talonflame is safe for at least a turn. Flamethrower will take out the Ndidi. Dual Wingbeat comes out and does actually a really decent chunk of damage, and now Iron Crown can come out in all of its glory and take out our opponent's final Pokemon. Very interesting that our opponent actually chose to go for Flamethrower there. I did not expect that, to be honest. But yeah, that is our week 1 match wrapped up. Very great start for our Bewares this season. A 2-0 victory against a very strong team is definitely a great start. So with all of that being said, hopefully you did enjoy, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.